Most games don't live up to their expectations. Take Cyberpunk 2077, one of the most anticipated games to come out in the 2010s. After 8 long years, it was finally released in late 2020. Fans were ecstatic, but that decayed fast as the game was riddled with bugs to the point where people couldn't even play it. Game developers did finally turn it around, but it took too long, as the game was dead before it even had a fair chance. A different game studio is looking to avoid that. Their name is Team Cherry, the makers of Hollow Knight. Their sequel, Silksong, is also a game that probably can't live up to its expectations. Not that the game won't be good, but the hype surrounding the game is too high. It's been 4 years now since Team Cherry announced that Silksong was in development. It is now July 2023 and there is still no word from them. There was a plan for it to be released in the first half of 2023, but then Team Cherry's PR man tweeted this. Hey gang, just a quick update about Silksong. We had planned to release in the first half of 2023, but development is still continuing. We're excited about how the game is shaping up and it's gotten quite big, so we want to take the time to make the game as good as we can. Expect more details from us once we get closer to release. That was back in May. There is no doubt that it will release at some point, but where is that point? If you've been following Team Cherry for a while now, delays and setbacks are common. Their first game, Hollow Knight, was delayed for 2 years on PC and even an extra year for other consoles. Going back even further, the team missed a deadline for a game jam when first conceptualizing Hollow Knight. The question is, why did they keep missing deadlines, and how can that tell us a potential release date for Silksong? This video will help try to answer these questions. To start, we have to go back to 2013 when Team Cherry was first created. Ari Gibson and William Pellin were both artists with a passion for games. They knew each other from years past, but decided to join forces and enter a Ludum Dare in 2013. It was a game jam where teams had to create a game based on a given theme in 72 hours. The theme for this one was 10 seconds. After a little deliberation, they decided on making a dash and slash game called Hungry Knight. The goal of the game was to kill 3 bosses, all while the knight was on a time crunch, having to eat at least 1 cherry every 10 seconds. For a game made under a 72-hour time frame, it was decent, but the critics thought otherwise. The score has gone up since the game jam, but originally got a 1 out of 5 stars on Newgrounds.com. The game can still be played to this day if you're interested in trying it, though due to Adobe Flash not being a thing anymore, it is a little annoying to play. The game may not have succeeded in the game jam, but what it did do is give Team Cherry a push to continue game creation. Oh yeah, and this cheeky design was made then. So some months went by and they decided to join another game jam. This one had the theme of Beneath the Surface. After coming up with an idea for the game, their eyes got too big for their stomach as there was no way in hell they were going to finish that idea within 72 hours. Still, they loved it and decided not to submit anything for that game jam. Here was the idea described by Ari. This rather abstract image was one of the first ones produced, and it still represents the game quite well, with a small town above and the players spelunking through the dark caverns below. The game's ambition quickly exceeded what was possible in 72 hours, but the core concept has remained the same through its final form. The game took heavy inspiration from other games they loved, such as Metroid, Mega Man, and Zelda games. Their ambitions were big, and they still had to go from this to this. All games need money to be made, whether to hire people or supplement living costs, and Team Cherry was no different. In late 2014, they decided on the name Hollow Knight and created a Kickstarter for it, aiming to raise 35,000 Australian dollars. It was a long shot as the game was still just an idea. The 2 Australians barely had anything to show for it at the time, but to their surprise, people took to the idea, eventually crushing the funding goal, raising over 57,000 Australian dollars from over 2,100 backers. One of their selling points was their stretch goals, as you can see on the screen now. Almost all of them, including the ones not hit, made it into the game at some point. The odd man out here is the second playable character, but we'll get to that. With his extra money, the team hired sound designer Christopher Larkin and technical engineer David Kazi. Both contractors had an important role in the game. A quick side note, I'm not going to review Hollow Knight in this video, I actually have a short for that, but I wanted to point out how good Christopher Larkin's music is. He ended up winning an award for its OST. The music really set the scene for the game. Anyways, this meant that there were only 3 people building it. For a game with so many ideas and all hand-drawn art, it shouldn't be surprising that the game was going to take some time to come out. The team wanted to perfect the game, and perfecting something takes time. As you might have noticed earlier, the game map ended up becoming quite vast. So vast that there was an entire late game area cut out deep in the development cycle called Bone Forest. On top of that, the game's largest area called Deepness was also cut down considerably. Yes, you didn't mishear, even though it was cut down, Deepness was still the biggest section in the game. Team Cherry did not want to do this, but realized they had to if they ever wanted the game to come out. So there's been a little bit of a time skip. The game wasn't released in 2015, neither 2016, but it finally got released in February 2017 for Windows. Nothing really notable happened during that stretch other than Kickstarter updates and Matthew Griffin being hired as their PR man. The team announced that Hollow Knight would be out on Mac and Linux a couple weeks after Windows. If you've seen any patterns to Team Cherry so far, then you might have predicted that that didn't happen. To be fair, the game released on those two platforms only 2 months later, so not really a big deal. Team Cherry has joked about this before, describing themselves working on quote-unquote cherry time. The other platforms like PlayStation and Xbox were being ported over the course of 2017, though they weren't done until the end of 2018. Those platforms took a long time because they weren't the priority. One of the promises Team Cherry made with fans during the Kickstarter stretch goals was still incomplete. If you recall, one of the goals was for the game to be released on the Wii U. While that goal was hit, there were still some problems with it. First, the Switch came out basically at the same time as Hollow Knight did on PC, so by the time it was complete, the Wii U was obsolete. The second, and really more important thing, is that the Wii U was lacking in the power department. To put it simply, the game ran like shit on the Wii U. Because of that, Team Cherry scrapped it. During that time, a couple things occurred. David Causey left the team for a corporate job, but was replaced by still current dev Jack Vine. Jack played a very large role in porting the game to the consoles. The other big thing that happened was 4 different DLCs came out, each is shown on the screen right now. That led up to the PlayStation and Xbox releases called Hollow Knight Void Heart Edition, essentially an Ultimate Edition with all the DLC included. Oh yeah, the game also sold over 2.8 million copies during this time. After the 4th DLC, Godmaster, came out, there was only one more DLC planned to be made, and it was called Silksong. Finally, Team Cherry was going to deliver on their promise of a second playable character. Right, that does seem to happen quite often with Team Cherry. At least this announcement came with a cool trailer with it. Fast forward to E3 2019 and there it was, a playable demo of the game. Ignoring the slow quality recording, the gameplay looks clean, pretty smooth, and there was a lot to do. Undoubtedly, it's going to be a big game, definitely bigger than Hollow Knight, but then why has 4 years passed without any beta or indication of a real release date? Well, let me get the obvious out of the way. I'm sure what happened in 2020 screwed the development of the game. Whether it not be able to go into the office, or sickness, or whatever it may be. Again, I'm not mad or angry that the game hasn't come out yet. The only thing that bothers me is the lack of information. There are no more blog updates, Twitter updates are few and far between, and the only update to come through on Discord is this one, and it was in early 2021 from Matthew Griffin. You could say we finished all the content of the game or in final testing, but even that doesn't say anything about the release schedule. My own personal philosophy is that you should not announce a release date until you have had a build that could be released, and even then, you're just giving yourself some time to fix additional bugs and market a game. Assuming that the message is true and the game has been in testing for over 2 years, something big had to have changed within the game. It's either going to be bigger than a Call of Duty, or it's going to be completely different than what we've seen. Over the rest of 2021 and some of 2022, Silksong became more of an idea than an actual thing. People were convinced the game was never going to come out and that everything surrounding it was fake. Well, in June of last year, Xbox and Bethesda had their game showcase. And, well, let me just show you. Out of left field, a new trailer dropped. Twitter was on fire after this one. No one had expected this to happen, and even better was the news that the game was finally going to be released within the next year. Well, we've now caught up to the beginning of the video. At least there was hope before that tweet from Matthew Griffin. Now us Hollow Knight fans are left in the dark once again, but fear not, as I may have an answer to when this game is coming out. And what I'm going to say is going to shock you. But first, my theory on why it's taken so long. Team Cherry has consistently only had 3 people building out their game, and as we have seen, they're consistently ambitious in their endeavors. That is not a bad thing, but when they add some more into the game, it gets to be a lot for them. This makes it hard to actually predict when the game is going to come out. Based on their history of delays, I would guess that the game's going to come out in... Okay, I lied. I have no idea when the game's going to come out. This whole video is basically just a way for me to cope with the fact that the game is still not out. My not-so-educated guess is that it will come out in early 2024 for Windows. I have a couple reasons for this. One, it is a popular time to release games, like Elden Ring last year. Two, they have done so in the past with Hollow Knight. And three, assuming that they are somewhat close to finishing, this will give them time to, as Matthew Griffin put it, fix additional bugs and market the game. As impatient as I am, I think it's better that Team Cherry isn't rushing to push this game out. If it takes extra time to avoid what happened to Cyberpunk 2077, then so be it. That is an outcome no one would want. Either way, no matter when it comes out, I'm gonna buy it and I'm gonna play it. If it's bad, expect a hissy fit from me, but I doubt that. All we can do is hope that it will come out somewhat soon. And if you're somehow still listening to this and haven't played Hollow Knight, do yourself a favor and try it. It's well worth it. Thanks for watching.